This webinar series is brought to you in part by ATLAS.ti Qualitative Data Analysis, as well as the International Institute for Qualitative Methodology. My name's Yvette, and I'll be your host today. You're all on mute right now and will be for the duration of the presentation, which will last about 35 to 40 minutes. After the presentation is finished, you can raise your hand and I can give you the microphone and you can ask your question. If you don't have access to a microphone, you can type your question into the chat and then I will read it out to you. So we'll go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Dr. Sigrid Halldorsdottir is a UBC graduate and a professor and head of the Faculty of Graduate Studies at the School of Health Sciences, University of AkureyriIn, Iceland. She has been teaching qualitative methodology for about 30 years. Dr. Halldorsdottir published papers using the Vancouver School, and her work includes in nursing and midwifery, the Icelandic Journal of Nursing, Cancer Nursing, Midwifery, Healthcare for Women International, Scandinavian Journal of Caring Sciences, Qualitative Health Research, Journal of Clinical Nursing, Journal of Advanced Nursing, and Recent Advances and Research Updates. In physiotherapy, and in medicine, the Icelandic Medical Journal, Scandinavian Journal of Public Health, Australasian Journal of Cancer, and Open Longevity Science, as well as in other fields like International Journal of Education and Vocational Guidance. She is the editor of the Handbook of Research Methodology and the only text on research methodology in Iceland, around 500 pages written by 34 different authors. Dr. Halldorsdottir, we're very honored to have you here with us today. I'll just give you the presentation rights and you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. What I would like to do today is to talk about phenomenology. Let me see, like this. So, I will discuss phenomenology as a research methodology and about a few other phenomenological schools. I will discuss the Vancouver School of doing phenomenology in more depth than the others. There are many phenomenological schools, but not many that are Ricoeurian, based on Paul Ricoeur. And the Vancouver School is one of the few. And the Vancouver School is popular in the Nordic countries, but has been used in other places of mostly Western countries. Dowling and Cooney published a paper in 2012 called Research Approaches Related to Phenomenology, Negotiating a Complex Landscape. It was published in Nurse Researcher, and I found it very helpful. Even if it can be debated the way they sort of categorize the different schools. But of course Husserl was the founder of phenomenology, and she divides those schools that are based on Husserl into descriptive and interpretive phenomenology and then just descriptive phenomenology. You may remember that Husserl said or wrote der Ding an sich, which means go to the things themselves, go to the roots, just describe it how it is. But the Spiegelberg has pointed out that it's hard to describe something without interpreting it. So while some Husserlian phenomenologists say that you cannot say that a school in phenomenology based on Husserl is descriptive and interpretive. But Spiegelberg says he didn't actually say that you couldn't interpret. He just didn't mention it. So at least Dowling and Cooney have divided their into two and include interpretive phenomenology, for example, Max von Manen. Now, Heidegger is the successor of Husserl, and then Gademer, which I like very much, it's fun to read his text. And Ricoeur, which I like even better. It's very good. He's understandable. It's good to read his text. And Dowling and Cooney claim that well, they didn't find any other school that could be called Ricoeurian school of doing phenomenology. So I think this is a really good attempt that they made to negotiate a complex landscape, and their paper is very good. I recommend it. So the history of phenomenology, it's not an easy task to write the history of phenomenology because it is a movement and is constantly evolving, like Spiegelberg has said in his book, The Phenomenological Movement, A Historical Introduction. And I strongly recommend his book to those of you that are really interested in phenomenology, because it's very well written and just a treasure in my mind. The founder of phenomenology is, of course, Edmund Husserl, and he wanted to present a counterweight to unilateral quantitative thinking and methodology. He was born in the Czech Republic, what is now Czech Republic, and was a professor of philosophy at the University of Freiburg in Germany. In 1911 came the publication of his philosophy as rigorous science, groundbreaking text. And in later writings, he declares the birth of a new scientific method, phenomenology. Now, the main successor of Husserl is Martin Heidegger. He was born in Germany, influenced by Husserl, Augustine, and Kierkegaard. He wrote his main work, Being and Time, in 1927. And he was a professor in philosophy, retired in 1959, but continued to write until his death in 1976 in Freiburg. Hans-Georg Gademer was a German philosopher of the continental tradition, best known for his great work Truth and Method, or Wahrheit und Methode, published in 1960. Gademer's goal was to uncover the nature of human understanding. He claimed that people are embedded in the particular history and culture that shaped them, which affects their pre-understanding, or Vorverständnis. And then it's Paul Ricoeur. He was born in France, a professor of philosophy at the Universities of Strasbourg and Paris, Sorbonne and Nanterre. He is considered by Max van Manen the leading phenomenologist. He wrote very much. And the main theme is that phenomenology cannot be without hermeneutics, and hermeneutics cannot be without phenomenology, which means that he says you cannot just describe something. You always have to interpret it. So he said, you know, you can have phenomenological hermeneutics or interpretive. It just means interpretive. So it's interpretive phenomenology, or so he says there is marriage there, and you cannot divide the two. Now, the basic understanding of phenomenology, the phenomenology is based on the understanding that individuals view the world in their unique ways, and their vision is shaped by various experience and the interpretation of that experience. This vision affects how they experience the world and how they live their lives. The main efforts in the research work In phenomenology, the researcher seeks to understand each participant in the context which he or she is in. The focus of the researcher is to create a certain general picture of the experience or the phenomenon in cooperation with each participant, based on how it looks from the perspective of exactly this person. The overall picture of that participant is compared to the overall picture of the next participant, and so on until a complete picture of the phenomenon has been fully clarified. And the words of the participants are the building blocks used for this work. And the reason why I put the phenomenon in italics is because in phenomenology you really listen to people, but you are always, and you try to understand that person in context, but you're always then going back into describing the phenomenon. So this is very important in phenomenology. Now, Adrian Francom was the first to develop a clear methodology with a phenomenological approach. He presented the 5 following steps. Initial examination, identifying the research question, scientific explication, and then final description of the phenomenon. And he was the first. And you can see that these are sort of the basic, all of these 4 points are included in all the schools, really. Now, Herbert Berg, that I have mentioned before, and I'm a great fan of him, is that he has presented 6 steps of phenomenology common to all schools of phenomenology. The first is description of the phenomenon. The second, analysis of the essences of the phenomenon. So you have both the essence of the phenomenon and the essences. So the phenomenon has an essence, and that essence is made of many different essences. So you're trying to find the core of the phenomenon and how the different essences of the phenomenon are arranged together that make up the phenomenon. And the third step, apprehending essential relationships among essences. An analysis of cognitive processes, preconceived ideas systematically put aside, and this is so that you can before you do it at baseline, but it's important to do it systematically before the interpretation. And he puts this 6th step, interpreting the meaning of the phenomenon. And he's, as I said before, he says Husserl, even if he didn't mention interpretation of the meaning of the phenomenon, it is implied in his text. So, and I agree with him. I think you just cannot describe something without interpreting it. Now, Amedeo Duarte, his method involves obtaining deep research data with each participant. The sample size is a little smaller than in other schools, usually 4 to 5. And once the interview process is completed, the data analysis is presented in 5 main steps. First, get a complete picture of the experience. Second, analysis of knowledge units. Third, cleaning, explanation, and condensation. 4, reflection and transformation. And 5, presentation of results and then presenting the finding for confirmation or criticism. And I don't read in detail these different steps because I know you get access to this afterwards. Because, of course, what I want to do is to describe the Vancouver School in more detail. The last school I want to mention is by Paul Collaissy. He proposed a phenomenological method in 7 main sections. He was a psychologist. And the first one is reading all interviews. Second, find key phrases and remove others. Third, finding the meaning of key phrases. And then fourth, key phrases are organized into one whole. And 5, preparing the phenomenological description. And then number 6, writing the phenomenological description. And then this last one, confirmation. So, and then it is the Vancouver School of doing phenomenology. It is designed to raise awareness of human phenomena. For example, for the purpose of understanding people and their experience, as well as improving human services, for example, healthcare or education. So there is some activism embedded in the school. You want to do something about the findings, improve people's circumstances if you can. Now, influences can be identified from Joan M. Anderson, that's regarding phenomenology. Collaissy, that was the last school I described, as well as Spiegelberg, both on phenomenology. Now, Paul Ricoeur, certainly, very much based on Paul Ricoeur, interpretive phenomenology, but also on Thomas Schwandt, on constructivism. Now, the Vancouver School was published in the year 2000, and there is a web access to the book chapter that is in a book called Qualitative Methods in the Service of Health, published in Sweden in English, and everyone can use it for free. Now, there are 12 basic steps of the research process of the Vancouver School. Don't worry that it's very small. I will take each 3 steps at a time. So it's just to show that there are 12 basic steps. And the full name of the school is the Vancouver School of Doing Phenomenology, but it's always referred to as the Vancouver School. And it's both student-friendly and user-friendly, because it was through teaching students. I was studying at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver in Canada, and Joan M. Anderson was my thesis advisor or tutor, and she taught me the method she had learned in Harvard with Arthur Kleinman, and she had also developed it. And at that time, I completed my master's degree in 1986. And at that time, there was sort of a certain belief that you couldn't really learn to do phenomenology without a master. And it was this master-student relationship. And so there was nothing in writing. And when I came back home to Iceland and I started to teach at the University of Iceland in Reykjavik, I identified that the students wanted to have something written. And it's also me as a teacher, I could see that one year I would forget to mention this, and then next year I would forget to mention something else, so that I have to write it down. So I contacted Joan M. Anderson, professor at UBC, and asked her if I could write about the school, and we could call it the Vancouver School. And I did it as part of a course in my doctoral program in Linköping University in Sweden, and it was a self-directed study course, and Joan M. Anderson was my tutor in that course. So, and I wrote this book chapter that, and I'm very thankful to Joan, because this is the only version of the Vancouver School that has been published in English. But anyway, these are the 12 basic steps, and because when you're a student, you're doing phenomenology for the first time, it's very good to have just one step after another. But included in every step is a process. It's a 7-stage process. And it's silence, because phenomenology begins in silence. You have to sit down and think about your preconceived ideas about the phenomenon, because or else it will always get in your way. You will not hear the people properly that you're listening to, because your preconceived ideas are sort of in control in your mind if you don't make them obvious. You cannot get rid of them, but you can write it down. And then you have to reflect in every step. You're always reflecting. And then identification. Identify what is the essence of what this co-researcher, what we call the participants, what this co-researcher is saying. And then you select. You have many, many options, and you select. You as a researcher, you select what you think is most important. And then there is always this interpretation. And then there is this construction, and that is influence from constructivism. And Joan M. Anderson, professor, she always emphasized, don't forget, you are the one who is constructing the findings. You base it on the words of the participants or co-researchers, but you are the one who is doing the construction. And then there is always verification. And this you find in the book chapter I mentioned before on page 56. Now, let's go to the steps. In step 1, it's selecting dialogue partners. So it's choosing the sample. And the participants are selected through purposive sampling. So it's you choose people in your research based on the purpose of the study. So they have to have the experience that you're studying. And then this step 2, a special step, silence, where preconceived ideas are deliberately put aside. And the third step, participating in a dialogue. And it's usually 1 to 3 dialogues with each participant. So it's generally about 15 interviews. And then the 4th step, sharpened awareness of words or beginning data analysis. And data collecting and data analysis run concurrently. This is very often the case in qualitative research. So in the interview, you are listening and you are selecting in your mind what is important. So you start to have hypotheses about what this experience is all about. And you can try out your hypothesis in the interview itself. And that is best. So you say, are you saying that, or is it implied in what you're saying that? So you're trying to really listen and analyze right there in the interview. You're doing a data analysis. And then step 5, beginning consideration of essences. So this is the coding. So you say, okay, you're trying repeatedly to answer the question, what is the essence of what this participant is saying? And then within the basic essence, what are the essences? So you're always trying to really prepare step 6, which is constructing the essential structure of the phenomenon from each case. So there you go to the construction. And the main factors in each participant's story is highlighted, and the most important factors are constructed into an individual analytic framework in the form of a figure or a table. And I put it in red because if you compare the Vancouver School to all the other different schools, this is unique for the Vancouver School. But this aspect increases the validity and reliability of the study. Why? Because you are looking at each individual as a case study, really. And you look at this case as if you have nothing else. But you're always looking at the case in the light of the phenomenon. So this emphasis of having a visual data analysis, or the results of the data analysis, where you take all the different essences and you put it into one whole. And I always say to my students, be creative. No one should be doing it like anyone else. So some put it in a beautiful picture or a figure or a table, just depending upon how their own mind works. So you do it the way you feel fits your cognitive process. So this was step 6, and then it's step 7, verifying each case construction with the relevant participant. And this is done with all the participants. And I put this in red also because this is unique for the Vancouver School and increases the validity and reliability of the school. Because you're not at this point trying to put it into one whole. You're just looking at this particular participant. And you take your interpretation to that participant and you ask, did I get it? Did I understand you correctly? Have I interpreted your experience in the right way? And very often you got it. But sometimes they would say, well, I would put it, and they come with some modification. And this is very important from my perspective. Now, step 8 is constructing the essential structure of the phenomenon from all the cases. This is final construction. The researcher makes sure the model and framework constructed are based on the actual data. And this means you put all the different individual analytic frameworks in the form of figures or tables, and you put it into one whole. And then step 9, you compare the essential structure of the phenomenon from all the different case constructions with the data. So it's a meta synthesis of all the different case constructions. To ensure this factor, that it's based on the data, all the transcripts are read again. And this is also to increase the validity and reliability of the study. Now step 10, identifying the overriding theme which describes the phenomenon. That's the construction of the main theme. So what is done? The main theme, and thus the name of the study, is constructed. And this, you should never hurry in step 10 because it's so important. Step 11, verifying the essential structure with some research participants. So it's verification, but not all. The results are and conclusions are presented to and verified by some of the participants. And then step 12, writing up the findings and making sure it's a multi-voiced reconstruction, but not uni-voiced like qualitative research was in the beginning last century. The participants are quoted directly to increase the trustworthiness of the findings and conclusions. Triangulation of researchers. The research process in the Vancouver School study makes cooperation much easier than in many other research methodologies because each researcher can go through steps 1 to 7 and then researchers can work together from step 8 to 12. So, thank you. I think my time is up.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Halldorsdottir, for that wonderful presentation. Now, if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand and I'll try to give you the microphone. Okay, so I see I. Speckman has a question. I'll try to give you the microphone. Okay, I. Speckman, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I have a question about sampling. I saw that sampling has to be purposeful, and I suppose it is. But what does purposeful mean? What does it entail also? How do you know upfront which sampling is purposeful and what is not?
You try to look at the purpose of the study, and then you can you try to get people that have the experience that is needed. But for example, just earlier in this year, we were doing a study on post-traumatic growth, and we made sure that we only wanted to get people into the study not only that had had trauma, but that had reached the post-traumatic growth. But after we had interviewed maybe 10 people, we just discovered that 2 of the participants had not reached this post-traumatic growth. So sometimes it can be tricky because you tell people what is the purpose of the study, and you say we only want people that have this particular experience, but sometimes it can be difficult. So this is a valid question. But this is the first time this has actually happened to me, that that people think they have the phenomenon that is being studied, but they, at least in our opinion, had not.
So it's an intuitive, intuition has a part in it, I suppose.
Yeah, for example, in that particular study, we had 1-page description of post-traumatic growth to ensure that no one would volunteer unless they had reached this. But so it's very important to be very clear what the phenomenon is that you're studying.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a question. So heuristics also follows a step-by-step table analysis. How is the Vancouver School different than heuristic phenomenology? And I've used heuristics in my research.
Okay. What was your perception when you saw the description of the Vancouver School? What would you say was the difference?
They were very similar.
Okay.
But when I heard that you made a comment that the Vancouver School was one of the only phenomenology designs that uses the table analysis, that's what caught my attention, because I used the similar design in heuristics in my research.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and that was Moustakas 1994.
Okay, yes. Okay. Well, there is so much out there, and there are some similarities, for example, between grounded theory and the Vancouver School. But usually you can do the study in shorter time when using the Vancouver School compared to grounded theory. But when I was looking at these this picture that they made, which I found very helpful, this here. This is, of course, oversimplification. There are very many schools that are not mentioned there. So, and in my attempt to sort of to identify the differences, I remember that Margaret Sandalovsky, she took up the importance regarding verification, which is common to most phenomenological schools, that you want to have some kind of verification from the participants. And she said, how can you get verification from participants that have only maybe a very narrow experience of the phenomenon? And I'm reminded of the story about the man, the blind man that we're describing of an elephant. One was touching the side of the elephant and described that, and one was describing the trunk, and one was describing one foot. They were all rightfully describing a part of the phenomenon, but not the whole part. And this, I agree with Sandalovsky, is why you cannot take the final description of the phenomenon to all the different participants. And this is what I think is so important in the Vancouver School, is that you take every case construction to that participant. I may not have answered your question, but it's I don't know Moustakis that well that I can compare it really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Christina. She's left, but she asked, can methodology be used by a single researcher rather than a team of researchers?
Oh, yes, sure. I have done most of my studies alone, but I must admit that doing a study with another is much more fun.
Okay, and we have a question from Rada. Rada, I'll give you the microphone. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, also for your presentation. I must say I really admire that you said that Ricoeur is easy to read, because I find it everything but easy.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm really struggling with those very long French sentences. But okay, well, actually, my question is about Ricoeur. I was wondering, why is it that you connect Ricoeur so specifically to Vancouver School, whereas, I don't know, maybe it's just my interpretation, is because I just saw it just now, because I can somehow relate it to many other phenomenologists, and in a very broad sense of the word. So maybe because when I was working with Ricoeur, it was more about the meaningful actions and actions, reading as an action and so forth, and the phenomenologies. So I'm just wondering that why is that so connected to specifically Ricoeur? What is the part of it that is, kind of, do you understand my question?
Excellent question. Very good question. And this is the case, you know, I have read Husserl, I have read Heidegger, I have read Gademer, I have read Ricoeur. And so, of course, you are very influenced by everything you read. But I must say that there was such a complete fit between Ricoeur's ideas. I have read also Gademer, and I found it a complete fit with this method that you have to understand that when Joan M. Anderson, professor, was teaching us this school, she didn't identify sort of the source. So she taught you, and you did a study without really reading much about it. I mean the methodology itself. So it was only when I began teaching myself, I thought I have to find the root. So when I was reading Gademer and Ricoeur, I found this fit, but mostly I found the fit. I said, this is it, this is it, this is how I've been doing it. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, can you just tell me the name of the maybe work, the paper that you maybe could refer me to when it comes to Ricoeur?
Yes. Let me just get my doctoral thesis.
Okay.
Let me see, because it's a book chapter in English that is just excellent. And let me see. I think I have it in my. I thought I had. Maybe you can send no, it's not in my doctoral thesis. I thought it was there, but send me an email and I find the book chapter, because it's in English and it's wonderful. And it's in that book chapter, he just writes like you're not a philosopher, you know, but just an ordinary person. And so it's there that he explains why you have to have a hermeneutic phenomenology or phenomenological hermeneutics. And just that chapter just clicked, you know, it was just, but I also had a wonderful encounter with Gademer's text. Heidegger, I tried to read Heidegger, not eat it, but try to read Heidegger's text, and I was just lost. You just have to be a philosopher if you want to read Heidegger's text. Husserl, it's more understandable, I think, but it's just that when I read not only this particular text by Ricoeur, but other texts and what others have written about him. I wrote actually a paper on Ricoeur because I read so much of his work, and what I got from like the essence of everything I read by Ricoeur is that you're doing a study in order to understand, and just to have this as like a focus. You're trying to understand a phenomenon, and then you listen to people, you write it down, and then you treat the transcripts like text, like a text.
Yes.
So yes, yeah. So but what maybe is not totally Ricoeurian is that Ricoeur never assumes that you can go back to the participant to ask more questions. He just says, you know, you treat it like a text and you have only this text, but that's not really the case. I often contact the co-researcher again and ask, you know, questions, and my students do that as well.
Yeah, because I think that, yeah, he would understand it as a new action, and because of reading of a text is an action itself, so it's a new action. It's not anymore the same one that was before, right?
Yeah, but you know, I think you have to look at it, you know, that is a process. You are in the process of understanding a phenomenon in order to make that understanding available to others.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to stop at the text. You know, you can't go back.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I will send you an email for that chapter.
Yes,
thank you.
Yeah, it's a wonderful chapter.
Perfect. We have another question from Martha Abbey. Martha, I'll give you the microphone. Go ahead and ask your question.
I'm not sure that I have audio, but I'm interested in knowing. Okay, I'm interested in knowing more about the data tables. You mentioned that they could be creative in structure and representation. Do you have any examples to share?
Data tables?
Yeah, that was
you
one
mean
of your
like
steps.
in granted theory? Excuse me?
Yeah, that was one of your steps.
Okay, let's see. So in which step are you?
If you could go forth a couple more slides.
Yeah, but here you have all the steps, the 12 steps.
Right, I know, but it's teeny tiny.
Oh, okay. Let's see. We'll just go. So.
Not that one. Yeah, in the previous slide, you stated that an individual analytic framework in the form of a figure or a table.
Yeah.
I've seen various different types of matrices or tables, and I was just wondering what yours look like.
Oh, we have as many figures and tables and presentations, visual presentations, as the studies are, because each does it in their own way. So I could, if you want to send me an email, I could send some examples.
Okay, because I tried to do a couple tables for a different class, and I was just kind of structurally confused. So it would be helpful to see other examples.
Yes, you know, if you visualize, there may be 5 main essences of the experience, maybe 5. And then underneath those 5 major essences are maybe 5 you know, you can also call it themes, 5 themes. And in a table, you can have the 5 themes on top and have them in bold. And then underneath each, there can be maybe 5 or 6 sub-themes, and they're not in bold. One of my doctoral students did it this way, and that's a very neat thing to do. You know, but for some they prefer a figure. And so it depends on your own mind and you know, how you visualize things. I like the table, but I also like the figures.
Okay.
And I teach a course on qualitative research, and they conduct 2 interviews, and then they practice in doing these individual analytic frameworks, and it's wonderful to see how it varies. It's just so wonderful how the different minds, when you give people freedom to do it their way. They just don't have to do it like anyone else. Then you see how people, how creative people can be.
Well, thank you.
But send me an email and I'll send you some examples.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Bye.
Okay, we have another question from Amanda Brunson. She doesn't have a microphone, so I'll read out her question.
Yes.
The 12 steps remind me of constructivist grounded theory, Kathy Sharma's 2014. What would you say is the main difference between the Vancouver School of Phenomenology and the constructivist grounded theory?
Can you repeat the question?
Constructivist grounded theory. So what would you say is the main difference between the Vancouver School of Phenomenology and constructivist grounded theory? Kathy Sharma's 2014.
Kathy, what is your last name?
Sharmaz, C-H-A-R-M-A-Z.
Okay. I must admit I've never heard of Kathy Sharma's, and I haven't heard about constructivist grounded theory. But I would think that there are great similarities because the Vancouver School is influenced by constructivism, and it is influenced by grounded theory. So I would think, I haven't studied, haven't seen this text, but I would think there are great similarities.
Okay.
But thank you for the question. I would really, I look forward to look into this text.
We have another question from Shannon Golden. Shannon, I'll give you the mic. You can ask your question. Shannon, are you there? Do you have a microphone? Okay, if not, then you can write your question and I'll read it out for you. And if anyone else has any more questions, we've just got a few minutes left. And while we wait to see if there are any more questions, just let everyone know that the next webinar in the Qualitative Methods Masterclass webinar series will be on October 13th at 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, and the presenter will be Christy Jackson, and she'll be speaking on the 4 voices of qualitative data analysis software. So hopefully you guys will be able to come out for that webinar as well. Okay, it doesn't look as though we have any more questions. Don't see anything from Shannon. Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone for coming today to this webinar, and we hope to see you all on October 13th. You can also check out the IIQM website, www.iiqm.ualberta.ca, for more information about other upcoming webinars as well as our workshops and conferences. The Qualitative Health Research Conference is taking place in Kelowna, October 15th to 19th. And Dr. Halldorsdottir, did you have any final words?
Just thank you for attending, and thank you for the questions.
Perfect. And will your slides, can you send me your slides afterwards and I can post them on the website?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So the slides will be available on the website within the next week, as well as a recording of this session. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.